Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is To Back or Not to Back, where we go over all the Kickstarters, the cancellations, the updates, the not funding, all the usual stuff. Timestamps down below in case you want to jump to any particular section, which you might want to because these videos generally, and today is not going to be an exception, are generally an hour long. It's a very busy day. We're going to go through a lot of things, and we'll see what we can do. But starting off the bat, as usual these days, we have Cult of the Now. Cult of the Now is a segment I do in these where we're about to look at a whole lot of Kickstarters that are going to cost a whole lot of money. So I like to remind you that there are plenty of games available now that are very, very cheap and very, very affordable and very well rated. And today, this week, we're picking Bonfire, which is currently on sale over at Game Nerds. Not sponsored or anything like that, but Bonfire, which is a fantastic game. You can check out my review of it. Great game, and it's only $35, assuming you get your free shipping or put it on hold. They have an on-hold or option in case you want to slowly get things on sale as well until they add up to free shipping. But Bonfire from Pegasus Spill, great game from Stefan Feld, amazing experience, and that is our Cult of the Now. From there, let's go ahead and start us off, and we start with something that is board game adjacent. It's not even board game adjacent, let's be honest. It's just geek adjacent, which is close enough, but surprise, 4 secret novels by Brandon Sanderson, raising $24 million in a handful of days. This thing dropped on Kickstarter last week and is one of the most funded, if not the most funded Kickstarter of all time. I'd have to double check where we're up to at this point. It may have hit the most funded Kickstarter of all time. Whatever it's doing it very well, and it's only going to continue to grow because we have 25 days left. Brandon Sanderson basically took the whole geek world by storm, I guess you want to say, in the sense that he dropped this with no announcement, no anything. It just showed up on Kickstarter because apparently during the pandemic he got bored, and so he wrote 4 more novels. And so they're releasing it as a year of Sanderson, where you can buy a variety of different options or pledge levels, anything from those 4 novels to potentially getting a single novel every single month. There are both a bunch of options, from physical copies to digital copies, from which books you get, from how many books you get, all the stuff. But if you like Brandon Sanderson in general, and if you want more of his books, then this is an opportunity. For myself, I still have not read the Stormlight Archive, so I need to finish that one first. And that is our Geek Adjacent, our only Geek Adjacent one for today. From there, moving into the cancellations and not funding category, we have Umbrella Academy from Mantic Games. Umbrella Academy was on Kickstarter for a fairly short time, 731 backers, $63,000 raised, and then they canceled at the last minute. Now, the update as far as why they canceled or whatnot is currently for backers only, which I was not one of them, so I don't know what this actually says, but based on the comments, it seems like it's likely to come back for a bit of a retooling, a bit of a rework around potentially graphic design or things like that. They're getting a lot of comments and critiques around how plain the board looked and how it was just a placeholder for cards and how they wanted the graphic design to be a little bit different or better. I don't know what their actual plans are. I'm just going by what I see in the comments. But this is Mantic Games. It was a £75 game that was available that was basically just a bunch of cards, a bunch of comparisons to Marvel United in terms of the general comparison as far as the way the gameplay worked, as far as running around, dealing with a certain villain, picking certain heroes, and then placing tokens down on cards to resolve them as you run around in a circle dealing with these various cards. So high-level comparison to be sure, but that's basically Umbrella Academy. I assume we'll see it back. I assume we will see it back on Kickstarter. Moving on from there to the not funding category, we have 2 in the not funding category. We have Pilgrim by Amusement. Amusement, this is also coming from Spielworks Games, I want to say. This is the first time I've seen them over on GameFound. They have previously been on Kickstarter, 253 backers. It'll likely fund before time runs out, but we'll see. I mean, we have 14 days left, and not a lot of space to cover as far as the funding goal, so I imagine it will fund. And this is a Mancala-esque heavy Euro game, taking a Mancala mechanism, which we don't see done a lot. The most famous one is obviously going to be Trajan, but applying it to this game over here, I don't know the gameplay details past that. A lot of these smaller campaigns in today's video, I didn't heavily dive into how they play past the surface level. This is going to be £65 for the game, and this is coming from Spielworks already. The game MSRP is going to be £75, but then they're also going to be charging you shipping as well. I believe it's £23 if you're in the US, depends on where you are, might be different amounts, but that's going to put the price of this game well over the MSRP as far as once you factor in shipping and all of that. This is unfortunately typical for Spielworks games. Their games in general, I find that they are fairly expensive. They're appealing to a very specific category of heavy Euro gamers, and they seem to fall into that kind of the genre of splatter games, but without the splatter hype and appeal. And they're under no illusions about that. They basically say, hey, it's going to be a small print run. We'll have 1,000 copies. You can go out and get the game now. Otherwise, you can try to hunt it down from wherever it might be. So even though the price point and the MSRP are not great, comparatively speaking, if it doesn't show up in retail and you don't have any other options, then who knows? So it's a tough one, and in general, their games do not hold their value, unfortunately. Spielworks games are generally fairly expensive, and they appeal to a certain demographic, but they don't tend to hold the value that well in the secondhand market. That is Pilgrim. Moving on, we have Spring and Autumn, A Story of China from Mr. B Games. I think it's Mr. B Games. Mr. B, I think that's the name of the company. Mr. B Games, yes. Spring and Autumn, Story of China. This is a 4X game that they're bringing to the table. This was on Kickstarter. This is on GameFound. Did not fund over there. Bringing it back over to Kickstarter. It is funding now. Actually, it's not funding now. Sorry, this is in the not funding category. It's still not funding. $35,000 out of a $45,000 goal. 254 backers. So it looks like they picked up like 50 backers more than they had on GameFound, or 30, 40 backers more. But they're still not seeing the amount of success they'd like, I'm sure. Mr. B Games has 27 games over on Kickstarter, and this is continuing the Hellenica system that they have. This is a 4X game that's bringing you, well, a 4X game, the 4X, expand, exploit, exterminate, all that stuff across the course of the game. I don't know much more about the details of how this one differentiates itself from other games in the 4X genre, but that's Spring and Autumn from Mr. B Games. From there, we move into updates. We have 2 updates before we go into all the new campaigns, and there are a bunch of new campaigns, and that's with me cutting out a few just for the sake of not having a ridiculously long video. But starting off with Kingdoms Forlorn. Now, no major updates here. Basically, Kingdoms Forlorn is running into their last day. You have a day left to back this game, basically a day, maybe 2 to back this game, day and a half left to get everything here. And they released their all-in. Their all-in is going to be a €429 all-in for a whole lot of content. You don't need to get all that content. This does not have to be an all-or-nothing situation. You can go ahead and get the base pledge for €139. You don't need all this stuff, and the base pledge is going to give you plenty between the stretch goals, between the daily unlocks, between all the stuff that they have over there. But as far as the content for the game, this is Kingdoms Forlorn. You can check out. There's plenty of content around the game, from King of Average to One Stop Co-op Shop to any number of dozens of other channels that have content around the game. But this is a dungeon crawler, story building, a solo operative experience. I'm not heavily going to go into what the game is. We've talked about it on the to back or not to back before. This is just generally some updates, which is they have a whole bunch of content they've slowly dropped, both in terms of free stretch goals. Free is relative, you're paying for it, but in terms of extra content to improve that value to the value to how much stuff you're getting ratio. So if you're someone that walked in day one, as I know there were a lot of people who did this, disappointed with how much content you were getting, especially compared to Anne's Trespass Odyssey, the prior game from Into the Unknown, well, a lot of those fears have been taken care of. A lot of the content has been revealed, and there's a lot more stuff for the game. But then past that, we have the day one expansion that was already released, the 10,000 Succulent Fears, but then they released 2 more, or perhaps 3 more expansions, if not mistaken. Let's go through them. We have the Barony of Bountiful Harvest over here, a major Kingdoms expansion, giving you more miniatures, more content, more stuff, and something that they've touched upon themselves, but it's definitely true and worth reminding, is that this is a game where when you have a horde of creatures, a horde of whatever, various enemies you're fighting against, each one represents its own development cycle. Each one represents its own card and its own way of acting. So there's a lot of variety in the experiences here and the enemies you're facing off, even if you don't have, 50 different hordes of zombies or whatever it is. And nothing against games like Zombicide. I love games like Zombicide, but there's a lot more going on when you have 10 miniatures here than when you have 10 miniatures in a game like that. So factor that in as well, as far as the gameplay variety you'll experience when you face off against unique creatures, every one being unique. From there we have the Sub-Kingdoms of the Sharon's Undergrowth, and then we have the Red Kingdoms of Ashin expansion. Another major kingdom expansion, more content, more miniatures, more stuff for this game. Again, there's a lot of stuff. I'm still just scrolling while I talk, just scrolling through pages and pages and pages, and I believe we still have one more if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not, maybe that was it, no, that was it before we moved to stretch goals. So we have 2 major expansions. You can see over here, the All-In Pledge gives you the base game. It gives you the 10,000 Succulent Fears, the Barony of Bountiful Harvest, the Red Kingdoms of Eshin, the Tales of Sir Galan add-on, the Knight with No Name add-on, and the Tale of Sir Cockatrice add-on. So a whole lot of content for the game, from stretch goals to anything. So basically, just a reminder, because this campaign ends in a day and a half, so if you're interested in it, well, time's running out. Next up, we have a very minor, much more minor as far as what's left, but similarly, you have a day and a half, 2 days left to go ahead and back Unsettled. Unsettled, which is, doing tremendously well. This is Orange Nebula's highest funded campaign to date, well exceeding anything they've ever done, which is amazing. I'm disappointed and amazed because, on the one hand, it's great and it's awesome. Unsettled's doing tremendously well, and Unsettled is a fantastic game. On the other hand, Vindication didn't do so well, and I like Vindication more than Unsettled, so I'm a little disappointed on behalf of Vindication that Vindication didn't see that mass amount of, this, basically what we see on the screen here. 11,000 backers, $1,500 raised, but both are fantastic games. No shade against Unsettled. They're both amazing experiences. Both of them are 5 out of 5 to me. Great games, very different in terms of the implementation, while maintaining enough similarities that it very much feels like the same design team. It feels like the same design approach while being totally different in the actual execution. And one's competitive and one's co-op. I saw a question today asking about solo, and solo, I can't speak for true solo playing with one character, but I've played this game multiple games, two-handed solo, and it's great. I highly recommend it as a solo experience, but you have to be comfortable with the fact that you're playing two characters. I say have to, with the caveat that I haven't tried one character, so maybe you don't have to be, but I think it wouldn't work as well with one. I think. I could be wrong. But either way, that is that. As far as what I'm coming here today is, first of all, you have 2 days left, and secondly is they released the newest small edition that you get, and it's in most pledge levels. If we can scroll through here without giving anyone a stroke, here we go. We have a Luna Synthesizer. Luna Synthesizer, which is a new die you can roll that will cost you energy, but you can go ahead and get more of the materials and resources of the data and materials that when you roll for the dice. So it basically gives you the option of getting more stuff on the board, but at the cost of energy. So it's a trade-off. It's just an option on the table. It will be $7 after the campaign, or if you want more than one for some reason, but otherwise it's included in most pledge levels if you get this in the campaign over here. So just one more small thing. For the most part, the campaign has been fairly straightforward with a few unlocks and reveals, but most of those we talked about last week already, so that's the one new thing that was left. Overall, highly recommend this game. Lots of content. I did see one comment last week, which I think is worth touching upon here. Having played the game, but not having played the new expansions, if you're torn for what to get your hands on, I would say that I personally would significantly more recommend more variety in planets than getting these gameplay expansions. The gameplay expansions look cool, and I definitely want them, but honestly, more variety in your planets is going to be even more impactful, I think, than having more stuff thrown onto the game. I want the more stuff thrown onto the game. I plan on getting it all, but in case you are looking for less of everything, I'd recommend more planets over more modules and stuff in the game. Anyways, that is all for the updates, which brings us to the new stuff, new campaigns, starting off with Western Legends Big Box. There are a whole bunch of campaigns, so feel free to skip around with the timestamps or just throw this on in the background and listen casually while we go through everything. Western Legends the Big Box. This is coming to you from, I always forget the name of the company. It's, what's it called? I always forget. Colossal Games, Western Legends Big Box. This is the culmination. I assume it's the culmination because it's going to be really awkward if there's another Western Legends expansion coming up in a month or two. But Western Legends the Big Box, this is the theoretical possible culmination of the Western Legends series, giving you a big box with like 2 promo cards or whatever it is, 2 promo things, in order to store all your Western Legends content in a single box with deluxe everything in the stuff. If you look over here, it's a great video to watch. I'll pop it up. Let's just go ahead and pop this up and skip ahead a bit. Dun dun dun. So I'm just taking an opportunity for a drink while we look at this. We take a look at the niceness that is the big box and the I don't know what company this is. I have no clue what it is, but whatever. Just stuff on the table as we look at all that magnificently piling up. There's a lot of Western Legends content. You see, I have a bunch of Western Legends content, but I don't have all the content. That is a lot of content for the game, but that all fits nicely into the box. And why am I getting a pop-up over here? What is going on my screen? What is happening here? What is happening? Why is there... Go away, computer screen. What is happening? Go away. There we go. That's just weird. I don't know what's going on there. Anyways, going back to this. So, we have the Western Legends Big Box over here. This is going to be $60 for just the box. And again, that's the big box. It's the insert. It's the promo cards as well. So, it's giving you all of that content over there. Additionally, there's a $200 level for the Emporium well, that's for retailers, so ignore that. There's a $269 level for you to go ahead and get the new in town, getting absolutely everything for the game, including the big box, including the stuff, including the specific inserts you're going to need. Now, what do I mean by that? So, this box is designed to hold the inserts that were available in the Blood Money campaign, the store whatever trays that were available in the Blood Money campaign. If you don't have those, you will need to buy those. Now, credit to Colossus, they say this like 15 times across the course of the page. They make it very, very clear you need to get those things. I'm just making it clear in case you missed those. You will need to get those inserts if you missed it from the original Blood Money campaign. So factor that into your decision. If you do not get those, you'll need to buy those a little extra, as well as the fact that, or alternatively, if you're getting everything new, that will all be included. So $270 for the new in town, for everything new for this game, which is a great price, by the way, for everything Western Legends. This is one of those times where if this is your first chance to get on Western Legends, these 233 people who want it all, who didn't get it until now, this is a great price for absolutely everything for the game, which brings us to the should you back it, should you not. A short version for this one, I mean, there's also shipping prices, by the way. There's a discounted MSRP, it's $60 down from $95, but then there's shipping, so you want to factor that in. But overall, as far as price point for this, the box itself will be available directly from them. They said it will be available from the web store or directly from Colossal. They have no plans to sell it to retailers unless retailers bought it directly during the campaign. So this is the one that you shouldn't expect to see at Miniature Market, Cool Stuff Inc. or whatnot. No guarantees that it won't, but shouldn't expect to, but it'll be available online directly from them. And so as far as your options of getting it, your options are getting it here, getting it on the secondhand market, or getting it directly from them later. I imagine the price point will not be better later, so I imagine the Kickstarter is the best price points to get it now. And if you're getting on the secondhand market, you're probably getting it from someone who's selling a whole bunch of other content you may not care about. As far as will it hold its value, same kind of conversation. I don't imagine anyone's really selling the big box on its own, or very few people are. I imagine if you're selling the big box, you're selling it as part of a collection of other Western Legends content, in which case it falls more into the general Western Legends conversation, which is generally it has done fairly well in the secondhand market without being amazing. For the most part, Western Legends has done pretty decently and holds its value pretty decently on the secondhand market if you find it's not a game system for you. So if you want to buy that $270 pledge, it's a decent back. You'll probably be able to get your money back on it because it's a well-rated, well-loved game. Moving on, Factory 42 for the Greater Good Edition from Dragon Dawn Productions. They were just on GameFound with their White Hat trick-taking game, and they're right back already. But basically, Factory 42 is a game that is both it's a game and also social commentary or mimicry or whatnot. It's going to be dwarven worker placement, but with a degree of a degree of bureaucracy and background story of like Soviet whatever as far as how you run your factory. But you're basically trying to work together-ish. It's a semi-co-op game as far as trying to accomplish your goals as various things get in your way, as bureaucracy hinders you and gets in your way in this worker placement experience. Overall, the pledge levels here is going to be €63 for the game, which is a hard amount to pull off because of the fact I did not mean to do submit pledge. I want to go to the rewards. Go to the rewards over here. €63 for the game. And €20 for the upgrade kit if you are someone that has the first edition of the game. So if you have the first edition, you can get the upgrade kit for €20. Alternatively, you're spending €63, which is not a small amount of money, plus shipping to get Factory 42. This is one that is unlikely to hold its value just because of the sheer price point of it, especially if you look at the current available game and the secondhand market. It's definitely not going for this much right now. Granted, that is the original edition. This is the second edition with the upgrade kit included. So there's a chance, but from what I'm seeing on the secondhand market right now, this game's rated as 7.0 on Board Game Geek. There's not a huge amount of demand for it. Enough demand that we have, a funded campaign over here with 1,000 backers, with nope, not 1,000 backers, that's awkward, 166 backers. So there's enough demand for this to fund and for this to work on GameFound as a campaign, but at the end of the day, there's not a lot of demand for it on the secondhand market right now. So if you're interested in the game, you can go ahead and get it by all means. It doesn't seem like it's one that's going to have a high degree of availability outside this, but the secondhand market's going to be limited inherently. Just 166 backers does not mean there's a lot of copies floating around, but if you're interested in it and you want to turn around and sell it, if it's not for you, you will almost certainly be taking a hit in it and you will lose some degree of something on it. Moving on to Behext from Smirk and Dagger Games. Behext is an unconventional deck-building game of magical combat as you basically deal with this little hex token that's flying around towards you, and you're trying to ricochet it and turn it around and send it off to others and have it explode by them as you craft your spells, as you deck build out, as you try to figure out how to score as many points as possible while playing the right spells, and a little bit of push your luck as far as the risk you're taking and the reward you're taking and how you ricochet the spells off in the other direction, have them all explode. A very interesting system that I'm very curious how it plays, because that kind of, hot potato game where you are basically trying to push it to the next person, does have a degree of almost not conventional, spell slinging games that we see nowadays, but I am curious how it actually plays out. But either way, that's as far as what Behext is, as far as how it plays. As far as the pledge levels is $45 for the Conjurer and $75 for the Battle Mage. The Battle Mage is going to give you both the Conjurer and the Battle Mage are giving you the Behext core game, as well as 4 mastery packs with a bunch of other cards in them. Let's see if we can scroll down and find the pledge levels here, or I scrolled past the pledge levels already. Let's see, we have over here, here, where are the mastery packs? Here we are. Here are the mastery packs for the game, just, including 74 new cards in the mastery packs over here. But then additionally, if you get the $75 pledge over there, you're getting the Conjuring Wheel Neoprene Mat and 220 custom card sleeves. So the base game is going to give you, both pledge levels are going to give you the Master Hex Metal Coin for any backers. But then the Deluxe pledge is giving you the play mat over here, as well as 220 card sleeves, $30 more for those over there. So you have to decide if that play mat and card sleeve bundle is worth it. Card sleeves, granted these are specific card sleeves, but card sleeves can run you a few bucks in terms of getting 220 card sleeves, so it's really mostly paying $30 for that playmat. That may or may not be worth it to you. You have to decide personally. But as far as the game itself, this is one that also is unlikely to hold its value. Practically speaking, this style of game doesn't have a huge demand, and part of that's evident from the fact that if you look at this campaign, 214 backers on a Smirk and Dagger campaign, Smirk and Dagger generally has a much larger following. But this style of game, this, spell slinging, head-to-head style of gameplay, it's not head-to-head two players alone, but, that there's just the card-based powers and abilities and nothing else. It's usually a hard sell to get people to heavily invested in these titles. That will apply as much on Kickstarter as well as, down the road as well. So it's one that, even at $45, I'm skeptical this is one that you can turn around and sell in the secondhand market. If you want to get your hands on a copy, you are getting extras by getting on this Kickstarter. You're getting that metal coin, so you are getting something extra here. But as far as the retail price, you'll probably be able to pay a little bit less at retail, and it won't hold its value, so likely not the best back as far as Behext. Moving on. We have Steve Jackson's Munchkin Presents Batman. This is a terrible back. I'll save you time right now. 2,469 backers, a lot of backers in this, and that's the combination of Batman and Munchkin. Between those two, you have a lot of popularity here. But this is Steve Jackson's Munchkin Batman. I love how, if you watch the video, they're basically they came to me and they're like, do you want to do a Batman Munchkin game? And I had to think about it. Am I prepared to do Munchkin with Batman? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Everything has had a Munchkin release by now. You've had so much Munchkin content out there. Yeah, Batman's where we draw the line. Batman's where we as a company say, you know what, we can pass on a Batman Munchkin game. Of course you're going to say yes to a Batman Munchkin game. You've done everything with Munchkin already. You've had Warhammer Munchkin. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. But either way, Munchkin Batman, a deluxe box edition, is going to be basically Munchkin and Batman. Not any major surprises. This is basically Munchkin. Small nuanced details as far as what you're doing differently thematically speaking, but practically speaking, you're still going through 9 levels of dungeons, you're robbing things, you're going to be getting in each other's ways, you're going to be trying to level up. It's basically Munchkin with a Batman theme. If you've played Munchkin, this is going to be, well, more Munchkin. If you haven't played Munchkin, I like Batman, it's probably a good place to start, but while I do think it's a good game to play, or a fun game to play, I don't think this Kickstarter is the time to do it, because the Kickstarter over here is going to be $50 for the game. $50 for the Munchkin Batman game, plus shipping. Okay, so you're getting $50 plus shipping, compared to the fact that all Munchkin games, Munchkin Deluxe games of this box size in general at retail are usually $30. Now, there's no guarantees. Things are changing. MSRPs are going up. The world is changing around us, but I don't think this is going to be $50 in retail, and you're paying $50 plus shipping here, and you're paying $30 in retail, and then, if you can get free shipping on your order, it's a significant savings. So you're paying a lot more to get this here, but there is a caveat, which is you're also getting, let's see if we can find it over here, if you back it on Kickstarter, you're also going to get the dice pack and blank cards. Okay, so you're getting 6 dice and a bunch of blank cards as well. If you value those to the tune of $30, then sure, back it on Kickstarter. Otherwise, wait for retail and pick this up there. This is not a good price point, and similarly by extension, I don't think this is going to hold its value. While the extra dice are nice and extra blank cards are fun, I don't imagine anyone's really paying, or very few people I should say, there's always someone, very few people are going to be paying the extra, the price point of this compared to just picking up at retail for $30. So, game looks fun, it's Munchkin and Batman. If you don't like Munchkin, this isn't going to change your mind. If you do like Munchkin, it's Batman on top of Munchkin, but I just don't think this is a good price point on the Kickstarter. Moving on, we have Downfall, the war game series. 371 backers, $41,000 raised. I almost said $400,000 raised. That's not true. $41,000 raised, 371 backers. This is Downfall, the war game, or more specifically, 2 different series in this. Now, they do have a 2-minute long video that I do recommend watching. In fact, if you put it on 2 times speed, it's still too slow, and it's only a minute long now. So I recommend that. You can check that out, but it'll give you a good overview of how to play. Basically, they very heavily focus on just taking quick actions. So every turn, you're just going to take an action. You're going to recruit. You're going to move. You're going to attack. You're going to use technology. Just a bunch of different things. You can reinforce your positioning. A whole bunch of different simple actions as far as how to tactically position yourself in this game. Now, without looking at the technology factor, which you should not be ignoring, without looking at the technology factor, it seems fairly basic, fairly straightforward. Could be a great game. Not saying it isn't, but it seems fairly basic and straightforward. But then the technology action is going to be a big part of the decisions you make in the game as you try to figure out where and when to put technologies into play as far as doing other things. Is it better to reinforce? Is it better to muster more troops? Or is it better to start getting your technology on the board so you can be better prepared? Those are going to be the decisions you make that are actually interesting as far as basically trying to win in this game. So it seems like a fairly simple game, not necessarily a problem, good or bad, just, you know, you can go ahead and take a look at it, see if it's for you, but it's, again, simple is both a good thing and a bad thing. It means it's potentially the lack of depth you'll find in a more complicated system, but it does mean it's more accessible, and if it does so in a way that doesn't compromise on the strategy, that could be a good thing. As far as the pledge levels, we have €55, $61 for the Downfall of Empires, and then a similar price point for the Downfall of the Third Reich, and then $80, well, let's go to the double pledge over here. We have Empires plus the Third Reich for $121. And that's where we start moving into the, okay, great, that's a lot of going on here, but that's a lot of money for a first-time creator, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it's a first-time creator. Yeah, first created from Do It Games. That's a decent amount of money for those games, contrasted with being able to get other games for the price point. This goes back to the whole Cult of the Now. The reason I show you a $35 well-vetted game in existence is because, while obviously different categories to these two games, at the end of the day, we sit there on Kickstarter and we pay like $75 for an unvetted, untested game that we're going to pay today and get it in a year from now, and that's essentially hoping everything goes right and there's no issues down the road. Or you could just spend $35 on something that is well vetted, well liked today. You can get a simple other game that's not, well, these. Nothing against these. It's going to be true for everything we cover today. Generally, Kickstarter involves a premium. You have to decide if that premium is worth it to you. But yeah, I don't see these ones holding their value. I could be wrong. War games are a trickier genre. I find that you often do find a subset of people who are willing to pay that premium, that are looking for those types of games and that value that specific game. So it is a trickier genre. It's not a guarantee, but I do not think that the price point is expensive enough that I think it's unlikely that these will hold its value, but it might be the best opportunity to get your hands on them yourself, because this is not going to see wide availability after the fact. Moving on, the Lost Code reboot. This is a campaign that was in the last 2 months of 2021, I want to say. Might have been earlier, but late 2021. The Lost Code is on Kickstarter, canceled, they rebooted now, they're coming back, and this one looks fun. It looks fun. I'm not convinced on some aspects, we'll talk about that shortly, but the basic idea of the gameplay is you have your set of numbers. You can have a number of each color, and you're trying to deduce your own numbers. You can be doing that by rolling dice and then assigning those dice to various gears that will slot in the band that you can set. So you can say, I'm going to be guessing my numbers between this number and that number. So you have different degrees of length of the bands themselves, and you're trying to figure out if you can utilize those gears to start narrowing down what your number is. You'll start making those guesses, and if you're wrong, if you're right, you'll start eliminating things. If you're wrong, you will replace that number with another number of the same color. So there's a degree of slowly evolved deduction going on as you try to figure out your own numbers that other players can see and you cannot. That's the core system. Fun system, or at least seems like a fun system. I haven't played the game, but I do tend to like this style or genre of game. I like puzzles, I like deduction, and this seems to have that. And it seems to be well vetted from people who've gotten their hands in it and played it. And the price point is potentially great, and I say potentially with an asterisk, which is what we'll get to over here. So for $25, you have the Lost Code board game. It's a saving of $5 at the MSRP. In general, same rules apply. Shipping's going to wipe out that saving. So if that $30 is the actual retail price, and it may well be, they've gone to great lengths to make this game smaller and fit in a smaller box and have very few components, so that this does seem like a game that might actually have a $30 MSRP. If it does, that's a bad price for the game, because $25 plus shipping is going to be more expensive than buying this for $23 with free shipping from Miniature Market when it shows up at retail. So that's always a trade-off there. Then from there we have the Late Bird, the Lost Code, which I thought was very interesting to call it the Late Bird. It's like that was an interesting choice that I would not have made. They're literally rubbing it in people's faces that they did not get the early bird, because the Late Bird over here is matched by the fact that there's an early bird. The early bird, the Lost Code, is giving you for $25, is giving you the Lost Code board game, the postcard, and the wooden token. And then the late bird is $6 more and rubbing in people's faces that they did not get the early bird. I just find that an interesting choice that I would not have made. There could have been a different title. The Lost Code Standard, the Lost Code. I guess they didn't want to call it Deluxe because it's not really Deluxe. You're just getting an extra postcard and token that you're paying $6 for. Maybe it's worth it to you, maybe not. Yeah, so that's a tough one over there. But either way, past that, as far as the game itself, there's also going to be, and this is the biggest reason over here, the biggest reason to consider getting this game on Kickstarter is going to be the deluxe content for the game that you do have to pay for, to be very clear, but it's going to be less easily available after the fact. And so if you want the deluxe content, which I'm trying to find over here we go. So over here we have the deluxe tokens over here, the plastic components upgrade kit, giving you 4 plastic logs and 54 plastic stones instead of cardboard stones. So it's going to be upgrading the quality of your game, but it's obviously doing so for a price point for $20. So that it's up to you if that's worth it personally. but if you're not getting this, then I'd recommend just getting the entire game at retail, where you'll probably save money. You'll almost certainly save money if you get it at retail. Granted, not a lot. This Kickstarter is not expensive, so the upside is, even if you're overpaying, it's not by a huge amount, but it still is overpaying. Whereas if you want the upgrade kit, at that point it starts drifting into, well, your options are getting it directly from the publisher later, potentially hoping, conventions, this, that, or just going ahead and getting it here, and that's probably worth it if you want that there. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? The retail version, for sure not. It's going to be cheaper at retail. Why would your copy hold its value? And then with the deluxe upgrade kit, I'm skeptical. It's possible. Once you have exclusive content, it changes the conversation inherently, but it depends how well received this game is. Will this game, like, be received and land, and people will be talking about it, and it's going to be like another amazing deduction game that you have to have? Or will it be a deduction game that's liked by a small subset of people and never really hits that critical mass? So that's a tough one over there. I am skeptical, but I could definitely be wrong. From there, we move on to Earth Under Siege Flashpoint, $137,000, 1,007 backers so far, 17 days to go. Earth Under Siege Flashpoint is a fantastic game that I do highly recommend, although we're talking about the game itself, not the price points yet. But Earth Under Siege Flashpoint is a stealth-based dungeon crawler, lots of content. You can check out a whole bunch of channels. There's gameplays of every single one of the scenarios so far. There's gameplay, there's multiple reviews, multiple opinions, there's overviews, there's previews, there's a ton of content around the game in case if you want to see if it's for you. There's Quackle, there's Man vs. Meeple, there's King of Average, there's One Stop Co-op Shop, there's myself, there's who knows how many other people and channels out there with a lot of content around this game, so if you want to see if it's for you, you have plenty of opportunity to do so. At its core, this is a stealth-based sci-fi game in which you're trying to, well, accomplish your missions as you go through a campaign of 12 scenarios, 20 with the expansion, and yes, there is a one-shot mode as well that will bring you up to speed for any particular scenario if you want to jump into it without having to play through the campaign and constantly be keeping track of that. Although, to be fair, 12 games is a fairly reasonable campaign for me. It's the only campaign I've ever really finished is like Wild Ascent with 10 games, so 12 I might actually be able to do. But either way, as far as the game itself, the game is very stealth-based. You're going to be running through the ship or base or whatever you're on as you try to stay hidden for long enough. And I say for long enough because eventually you will not be able to stay hidden. Eventually you'll have to shoot someone a little louder than you planned on and take someone out, and then something's going to see you, the camera's going to go off, the people in the control room are going to realize you're on, and then suddenly there are heavier patrols heading your way every single round. And the nice thing about this game, or not nice depending on how you perceive it, is the patrols never ever stop. They never ever stop. The only question at the table is whether you can stay alive long enough to hopefully take down this patrol before the next one spawns and takes you out. But there's always going to be that sense of escalation in the game as they keep heading your way, and they are strong and mean and going to beat you up. But if you can stay hidden long enough, you can actually accomplish your objectives first. That's a high-level overview of what the game is. I'm skipping a whole bunch of stuff, but like I said already, there's plenty of content if you want to dive into it more. As far as the why back now, Earth Under Siege Flashpoint will most likely never be available at retail. Now, there is that most likely, so it's not a guarantee, but at the same time, it looks like they have no plans to be available at retail. That's likely typical just based on the price point and what you can get over here. And they do say if it does go to retail, they have this in the FAQ, if it does go to retail, it will definitely be stripped down in terms of the amount of content because they just won't be able to give you what they're trying to give you once you factor in the retail tiers and the extra cost that retail will bring to the table. And that makes sense to me. That's fairly standard for a game like this. As far as the pledge levels, we have $120, which is not a small amount of money, $120 for the core box of Earth Under Siege, and then $170 for the Invasion Pledge, which gives you the expansion as well. And then there were 2 early birds as well. You notice how they didn't rub it in by calling the late backer Invasion Pledge, but either way, that's what you have over here as far as the pledge levels. So there were early bird pledges for the day 1 or day whatever, I don't know if it's a day or 2 days, whatever it was, and then there's the other pledges as well, which are still giving you a lot of content for the game. And speaking of the content, here's the content. We have the game tiles, and this is not one of those campaigns that properly laid it out. Like, all campaigns should do this because practically speaking, from a sales point, it works, where they lay out all the content as far down, slowly spreading this out across as many pages, so you get the feeling as you scroll through it that, oh my gosh, there's so much content that it just doesn't stop. Now, campaigns do that, and it works well, but not all campaigns do, and then you have, there's a decent amount of content in this game. I'm just saying that there's the balance between campaigns that know how to lay out all the content and campaigns that don't. This one does fall into the don't. Also, just to address it briefly, they did have a cancellation on their original Kickstarter. That's because they had shipping accidentally baked into pledge levels in a way that was a mistake. And the problem with pledge levels in Kickstarter is once you make them, you cannot edit them. Or once people back them, you cannot edit them. And so they had to cancel and relaunch rather than scare people away from every single time they back. But that's everything we have Earth Under Siege Flashpoint as far as the price point, the goals, what you're getting. There are a whole bunch of daily reveals or stretch goals, more specifically stretch goals as far as, backer things, totals, all this stuff slowly unlocking as you go through it. more characters, more monsters, more different things. Then that's basically what you have over here. The expansion is going to add 8 more missions, some more content as well, past just the more missions, and that's everything you have for Earth Under Siege Flashpoint, or at least as much as we have condensed into this time frame. But as far as should you back it, should you not, and then this dice add-on as well. Should you back it, should you not? A short version is the first thing that I can tell you is it's not going to be available at retail, or at least not in this form. So if you want the game, your options are the secondhand market or this Kickstarter. And that's where it gets a little tricky to actually know, because the price point is not cheap. This is $120 or $170 for a fantastic game. Seems to be well liked by most people who have dived into it, and it does very much remind me of V Commandos. Not just in terms of the game being a stealth game, but if you look at the original V Commandos, it had like 600 backers on the original campaign. It was not a well-received, well-loved game on the Kickstarter. They had to convince people. And then it landed, and people were like, oh, turns out that's a freaking amazing game. And then their next campaign had like 3,700 backers. So, and I kind of expect that same kind of escalation to happen here. I expect Earth Under Siege to be received with a lot of critical adoption, a lot of people saying how good it is, and then for it to show up on Kickstarter 4 years from now, 3 years from now with, you know, some other reprint, expansion, whatever it is, and then for it to have 4 times as many backers. I kind of expect it to happen, but that's also not a guarantee. At the end of the day, sometimes these games go under the radar. Also, it's different than V Commandos in the sense that V Commandos was significantly cheaper. It didn't have miniatures, but was a significantly cheaper game. The price point of $120 is a decent barrier to entry. There are a lot of Kickstarter campaigns that have been well loved by small subsets of people and never received that critical mass adoption. So this one can go one of 2 ways. It can be well loved by a small subset of people and never really expand outwards from that, or it can be well loved and then everyone wants a copy, in which case it's going to be hard to get your hands on it. Where I am right now in it is I'm not confident it's a safe back, practically speaking. I mean, I'm back in the game, I want the game, but I'm not confident it's a safe back. It depends on how much buzz or hype there is after the fact. It depends on how many people are talking about how well received this game is and how hard it is to get your hands on it, and whether they then have to plan a second campaign and all that stuff, or whether people don't have the hype and buzz and it kind of dies and goes away, and then people are looking at it and they're like, $120, hey, I can go ahead and sell it and maybe get back $110. So it is in that weird danger zone. It may well hold its value and be ridiculously hard to get your hands on it for less than the price point here. Also, it may not. So it does fall into that unknown category. I'm not willing to commit either direction. There's too many unknowns, and I've seen campaigns like this tilt in either direction. So it's a risk. You can back it now. It's a risk either way, to be very clear. It's a risk that if you don't back it now, you may find yourself really wanting it, and if you do back it now, you may find yourself, you know, selling it for a $20 loss. So factor those in for Earth Under Siege Flashpoint. Next up, we have Small Samurai Empires plus expansion plus playmat. This is coming to you from Arcona Games. I believe I'm doing that right. Arcona Games. Arcona Games. Yes. Okay. Small Samurai Empires expansion plus playmat. Small Samurai Empires is an action programming game that takes place across 3 ages with 2 turns each age, and each age you're placing down your things face down as your action program and then revealing them and taking the various actions. The core gameplay is area control. This is we have, you know, recruiting and fighting and all these abstracted concepts, but it's simple, it's light, it's to the point. It's not simple, it's light, it's quick, it's to the point, but it gives you a very distilled sense of area control in a very small condensed package. It's called Small Samurai Empires for a reason, and it delivers on that promise. The game seems to be well rated. It's a 7.6 over on Board Game Geek. That's a decent rating. It's nothing to sneeze at. And this is bringing you the expansion plus playmat as well. The expansion gives you a 1 to 5 player mode, so it brings 1 players and 5 players to a game that was previously 2 to 4 players. That has the playmat, which is separate from the expansion. The expansion also comes with an additional module as well, so some extra content for the game as far as what you're getting over there if you want to get that expansion. As far as will it hold its value, will it not, should you back it, should you not? Small Samurai Empires is one that, if you look at the secondhand market has been okay, not bad, not good, but I would say the biggest thing is this was not had a wide retail release. If you are interested in this game, Kickstarter is a decent price point to get your hands on it, and has not had a wide retail release, so it's just, you know, if you want the stuff, and plus there are some extras over here. There's some upgraded tokens you can go ahead and get if you want to get the Kickstarter exclusive, the free Tokugawa Deluxe tokens. So if you want that, get it. If you want to get that, that'll be on Kickstarter, not at retail. I would say if you're interested in this game and you plan on getting it anyway, Kickstarter likely is the best place to get it. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? Looking at the original game and how it did on the secondhand market, I would say you might lose a few bucks on it, especially once you factor in shipping. It did a decent job holding its value without blowing you away. So it's just the nature of being a cheaper game. You know, if you take a $30 Kickstarter and then you pay $10 shipping and you get $30 back, you technically lost $10, but hopefully you got to play something along the way. So it mostly holds its value, just not necessarily all the way up to the full price plus shipping. Next up, we have Illiterati. The irony of pausing to figure out if I'm saying it correctly is not lost on me. Illiterati, a cooperative survival game for 1 to 5 players from the Gap Closer Games, who did Rival Restaurants, if I'm not mistaken. But Illiterati is doing fairly well on Kickstarter, 2,700 backers, $123,000 raised, and good for them. This is a great game. This is a game that really surprised me. It was not on my radar at all. I wasn't even supposed to cover this game. Quacklip had a copy, and he's like, Alex, I think you'll really like this game. And I was like, I'll play it. And so I played it, and I really liked the game, so I'm covering the game, or covered the game. I have a review up, but yeah, it was not on my radar at all, and I probably would have turned it down had they reached out to me initially. Nothing personal, just word games in general I find are not my genre. I have 2 specific problems with word games, and this one doesn't have either of those problems. The problems I have is that, first of all, is that you have one player who potentially takes way too long. As far as coming up with the perfect move and min-maxing the way to, just like, okay, great, if I sit there and spend another 4 minutes on my turn, I can come up with a word that will score me 2 extra points. And the second is it tends to be, you tend to have the person who has the best vocabulary tends to have a strong lead over other players. There's always that one person in your game group who just has a better vocabulary and plays more word games than other people and just knows stuff better in that sense. This is a cooperative game, so it doesn't have that problem, and it's a timed game, so it doesn't have the problem of spending too long trying to come up with the perfect word. In Illiterati, effectively you're fighting against the Illiterati, who are trying to remove language or remove words or all that stuff from the world. You're going to do that by basically constructing books as the villains attack you. You're going to have books that give you specific criteria. You have to have 3 green letters with the category of food into your book. So you go ahead and look over here and you see what food has a C in it. Rice has a C in it. Anyone got an A? You try to figure out, we have rice and con and yes, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. You could form extra words that don't go into your book, and that's fine. And you want to form words because if you don't form words, you'll get hit. But you also, even though you're trying to form words in general, you want to form the specific words that accomplish your goal in order to complete your book. Once the players have completed a variable number of books, you're going to go into a final challenge. Meanwhile, along the way, the villains are attacking you in between rounds, playing villain cards that will mess with your letters and try to just shrink your pool or attack you or do different things. And so overall, it's a cooperative game where you try to craft books. It has got a 3-minute timer that is very, very, you gotta make sure you're on top of your game to actually survive. Well done game with that, and scaling difficulty. There's different options to scale the difficulty, make it harder for you, but overall, I really enjoyed this one. As far as the pledge levels, we have 2 different things here. We have $35 for the Illiterati Standard Edition. This is going to be the Standard Edition of the game that you can get at retail. If you're going to do that, honestly, I would just get it at retail at that point. This game will see a retail release, and once you factor in the price point plus shipping, retail likely will be cheaper for that core pledge. Alternatively, for $49, you get the deluxe copy of the game. The deluxe copy gives you 2 different things. The first is going to give you these bags over here, which, these more like, the screen printed logos on the bags. That's nice, not the main reason I would get it. We have the slide box, which again, nice, but not the reason I would get it. We have the bejeweled 3-minute timer, which is again nice, but not the reason I would get it. And then the reason I would get it is because 144 silkscreen letters on wood tiles. The wood tiles you get in the game are going to be actual wood tiles as opposed to the cardboard letter tiles over here. So, and the thickness, by the way, thickness shouldn't be a huge factor. They are aiming for the thickness either way. But overall, as far as if you're looking for just tiles that are nicer and crunchier, this is going to be the big deal that you want to get over here. These deluxeified wooden tiles. You don't necessarily need them. The cardboard tiles should be fine, but that is the big deal that you're going to be paying the extra $15 for to get your hands on it. Which means this brings us to, will it hold its value, will it not? The effective conversation comes down to, if this is a game that is not for you, is somebody willing to pay the $49 plus the shipping price you paid? Someone willing to pay basically $60 when they can probably get the retail version of this game directly from, from whatever online store for half the price? And the answer is, some people will, but not everyone. This is one of those games that falls in the category of, I definitely think that it's between the combination of it being a good game and the fact that there's deluxe components over here, I think you'll definitely find people on the secondhand market who are willing to pay the premium to get the nice stuff. At the end of the day, nice tiles, deluxeified tiles, are something we pay a lot for in a lot of games separately. We get tokens for Quacks of Quedlinburg, we get coin capsules, we get all kinds of deluxeifications for our games that we pay more than $30 for, and effectively, someone would have to make the decision to get the game new for like $30, $35, or buy your copy for more than that, but getting the deluxe components. So I think that it is possible that it will hold its value, but there'll also be people who are selling their deluxe pledges for less than that. The nice part about having, how many backers we have? 2,700 backers so far, and 200 of them are the basic pledge, so we have 2,500 copies before the campaign ends of the deluxe version of this game in the wild. Means you'll find a lot of people who keep their game, you'll find some people who sell their game and hold out for the high price, and you'll find some people who sell their game and are just, fine taking a $10, $15 loss, which will affect your ability to get your money back if this is not a game for you. So as far as the deluxe pledge, I think if you want it, go ahead and back it on Kickstarter. I know I am, but it's also one of those games that you may well end up taking a $5, $10 hit on, especially once you factor in shipping. shipping. It's just the nature of the ward games aren't going to have the same level of demand and popularity as other games, and you're looking at a $15-20 hike to get those deluxified tiles and deluxified extras for the game. That's Illiterati. Moving on, we have Alice in Wordland, Curiouser and Curiouser, an expansion for Alice in Wordland, which came out in 2019 from Draw Lab Games. And Alice in Wordland is another word game. We have 2 word games today. This one giving you a different kind of puzzle, different kind of restriction. As you go through the game, you try to figure out your topic and then the letters that you are banned from using. So you're trying to figure out, let's say, looking at the table here, something in your sandwich, but you can't use B, C, or N. So I can't say cheese, I can say ham. Okay, so you're trying to figure out desperately, trying to say the words that you need to say while ignoring the letters that are banned. Additionally, the Curiouser and Curiouser expansion, what that brings to the table is extra restrictions, extra things to be mindful of as you try to figure out other rules that you have to be, in addition to just having banned letters, you have additional words at the table, and meanwhile you're playing with the little teapot buzzing in to like log your points or your word or whatnot. That's basically going on in this game. The deluxe edition over on Kickstarter is going to give you the Alice in Wordland, the Curiouser and Curiouser expansion, and then also those deluxe little teapots around the board for your little player markers. It's going to do all that for $10 for the £10 for the £10 for the Curiouser and Curiouser expansion, £20 for the Alice in Wordland base game, and £34 for everything for the game. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? This is going to be a no on this one. This has been out already for a while, so you can already check the secondhand market for it. If you want the game, if you want the extras, it's quick and simple to get on Kickstarter, but it's likely one that will not hold its value if the original game is anything to go by. It's generally these games do have a hard time picking up an audience. In fact, to the point that, we have 202 backers here, which is more par for the course for this type of game. Illiterati is more the exception, something that has managed to do incredibly well, picking up 2,700 backers for a word game, which is fairly impressive. The only other company that does that for word games is going to be Tim Fowers with hardback, paperback, and paperback adventures. He has managed to build up a following around his word game, but usually that's the exception. These types of games do not tend to do as well. Which brings us to Solar 175, an epic classic Euro-style game coming to you from Cognito Ergo Meeple. And Solar 175 is a legacy game, like I said already. It is a legacy game that can theoretically be replayable if you reset everything. The game supposedly comes with 20 to 100 hours of content, which is a decent amount, and you could theoretically reset things if you have a recharge pack or whatnot. The game doesn't destroy components, but changes are made, so I don't know exactly how that plays out. But as far as, you can reset this one, you can turn around, you can replay it yourself if you still want to dive into it after 20 to 100 hours, or you can turn around and sell it with the recharge pack if you go through the process of resetting things. Lots of solid testimonials here. Lots of people seem to be very hyped about the gameplay experience. The pledge levels over here is going to give you £67 for the retail edition of the game, £84 for the deluxe edition of the game, and £93 for the super deluxe version of the game, and then from there the retail pledge. So lots of different options over there, and giving you a lot of stuff, a lot of content, a lot of meeples, a lot of miniatures, not meeples, lots of deluxe miniatures, lots of cards, lots of everything in this resource management game that, to a certain extent, I think Manvis Meeple, if I'm not mistaken, compared it to Orleans, which seems like an interesting choice there, just because not like a bad comparison, just that's an interesting, I wouldn't have made that assumption from the game alone without having them go through the differences there and how the game plays and the bag building elements of the game. But Orleans is a fantastic game, so that leads me to be even more interested. There's a lot going on here, a lot of videos to go through as far as the actual gameplay and how it goes through. Again, lots of positive testimonials, but I'm not going to heavily go into all that just because it looks like we're already running very low on time and we already have like another 5 campaigns left to go over, so I'm not going to go into everything, but there's a lot of content if you want to dive into it further. As far as should you back and should you not, this is a tough one just because legacy games in general, they have a harder time holding their value, but once you throw in a recharge pack, they do a little better, but still take a hit because they've still gone through that aspect. This is one where there's definitely going to be a degree of something lost when you turn around and resell it after the fact, if you turn around and resell it, and that's if you have a recharge pack. If you don't have a recharge pack, don't expect to get much back on this one. If you do have a recharge pack, you're still taking a bit of a hit because you've consumed something, but sometimes you can get something back on it. But lots of pledge levels, lots of options, and I'm definitely more on the uncertain side as far as where this one lies, just in terms of reselling it or finding out it's not for you. It's the nature of being a legacy game. Moving on, we have League of Dungeoneers. The League of Dungeoneers, first-time creators, 1,600 backers, and $200,000 raised, 24 days to go, and that's what happens when you build a campaign off a successful print-and-play experience. The League of Dungeoneers was a successful print-and-play from Michael Lundstad, who finally brought it to an actual game on Kickstarter, and again, this is what happens when you build up an audience, when you build up a good game, a good following, you tweak around it, you do all that stuff, and it also seems to be aiming for a quick turnaround time as a result. This is aiming to deliver in December 2022 over here, December 2022, which is incredibly ambitious, but again, the game has already existed and is already around, so there's more just production stuff. Lots of positive testimonials from Gaming Geek, from Dungeon Dive, lots of positive coverage around the game, and this is leaning into those OG dungeon crawlers with half RPG, half exploration, a little bit of Warhammer Quest, a little bit, it reminded me to a degree of, what's that game? Dungeon Universalis. It reminded me to a degree of high level overview or whatnot. There's a huge compendiums of the games, the rulebook, the bestiary. I'm probably saying that horribly, but lots of content, lots of stuff to go through here. This is one of those dungeon crawlers that if you like this style of dungeon crawler, then there's a lot going on here. This to me is not my preferred dungeon crawler. I'm much more of a, I don't know, what's it called? What's the common one? Massive Darkness style or Descent. I'm usually more of the more new age stuff. This is leaning heavily into the old school, but with cleaned up mechanics to be more new age friendly, but old school thematic, if that makes sense. A few pledge levels over here. We have the primary tier for 63 euro for the game, and then the all-in for 135 euro for the game. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? It's hard to say for sure because, I mean, there's no prior history, and this has been a print and play until now. But as far as I would say, Dungeon Universalis is a good reference point for something that's similar. Dungeon Universalis is also a similar game that brings a similar style of gameplay that has done fairly well in the secondhand market, holding its value fairly decently because there's a large passionate audience around the game and a creator who's very involved in the community, building up and tweaking things as needed and doing what he needs to do throughout the course of the game. And I think the League of Dungeoneers is likely going to hit that same point. I think there's a decent chance that this one holds its value just because, I mean, it's incredibly well rated even just now, so I think there's a decent chance this holds its value. Definitely not a guarantee because it does fall into that more of an unknown spot, but using Dungeon Universalis as the closest reference point, I think it's a fairly safe back. Might lose a little something, but likely able to turn around and sell it for something if it's not for you. From there we have the Library Labyrinth. Library Labyrinth, 515 backers, $21,000 raised. This is a game of trying to basically contain the various mythical creatures that are exploring the library. You're going to have to contain and slot 6 enemies, 6 beasts back into the slots, using a whole bunch of fictional women that are fictional or real women from history, both, well, fictional and non-fiction women, as you try to match up the various tokens, the various monsters. You have these different monsters, different beasts that you're trying to take down. You have to be mindful of the storytelling, kindness, conviction, the different types of attributes the people have as you collect books, as you wander through the library, and as you put people back onto the shelves. So a bit of a dungeon crawler, but with a more accessible theme. It's got the dungeon crawler vibes, much more accessible in terms of the gameplay, and much more just matching of symbols as far as what it's doing over there. The pledge levels are going to come in at roughly $39 for the copy of the game and $67 for the all-in bundle, which brings us to the will it hold its value, will it not? And the answer is likely a no in this one. Not a guarantee because they definitely said this is still a prototype, but even just looking at where the game is from production stance and from the art is, comparing it to other games that are currently available or out, this is one that's less likely to find the high level of demand for the game in the aftermarket. 515 backers for this. It's one that I think if you want the game back on Kickstarter, it's likely to have not a huge retail availability or release, but if you want the game, back it now, but as far as holding its value, I'm skeptical that it will. Moving on, we have Sentinels of the Multiverse, Rook City Renegades. Sentinels of the Multiverse, Rook City Renegades. This is the definitive edition of the relaunch of Sentinels of the Multiverse, which is they relaunched Sentinels Multiverse, I don't know, last year or something like that. This is after, and there's a lot of people who are upset about this one. I'm always in the camp of I understand both sides, but basically they had a Sentinels of the Multiverse, a final big box, everything, Oblivion, and here's all the stuff, and here's everything for the game ever. And then a year later, they're like, and now we got a new Sentinels of the Multiverse Definitive Edition. And people are upset about that. I'm always in both camps. I understand people who spent a lot of money getting the final everything for the game, only to see a new edition relaunched. And then I'm also on the side of, okay, but your thing didn't stop being your thing, and your thing is the exact same level of your thing, whether or not there's new content for the game. I kind of hear the part where there should have been arguably more of a delay before they're like, here's all the stuff, and now we're relaunching the entire series. But it's always a balance, and there are no winners in this balance. But anyways, the definitive edition of Sentinels of Multiverse came out last year. Overall, the game, this Rook City campaign is following the same general line of things, although with a caveat worth mentioning, which is basically Sentinels of the Multiverse Rook City Edition is $50 for the game, and that's going to give you the definitive edition foil promo pack. This is the exact same thing they did in the first Kickstarter for the definitive edition last time. It was $50 for the base game plus the promo pack. And if you look at the secondhand market, if you look at buying it at retail will cost you $42 with free shipping if you get to $100. Buying it over here is $50 with shipping added. So obviously there's that like, you know, $18 price gap roughly as far as getting your hands in the game, which is a question of, is that worth it or not? And that comes down to the foil pack and how much you care about the foil pack. So if you want the foil pack, if it's worth it to you, then sure, go ahead and spend that extra $20 to get the game here. If you don't care about the foil pack, you may as well get it at retail instead. As far as will it hold its value, well, there's two things to talk about. The first is that the original Sentinels of the Multiverse Definitive Edition has done a decent job holding its value in the secondhand market. If you were someone who backed the game and it wasn't for you, people are selling their copy for $60 easily, so it is holding their value just fine. Secondly, and just importantly, there is a 90-day money-back guarantee here. If you get the game and within 90 days you decide it's not for you, they're going to issue you a prepaid shipping label and you'll get the game right back. I don't know if they're refunding shipping. That's the part I don't know. I don't know if the exact asterisk if they're refunding shipping fees or whatnot, but there's definitely a high degree of confidence that they seem to be fairly confident that you will like this game. And that makes sense. This is an expansion after all. For the most part, this is an expansion to Sentinels of the Multiverse. If you already got the Definitive Edition, you're probably going to be keeping Rook City. The caveat there is if you're jumping into the all-in pledge, the Sentinels and Renegades over here, you're going to be paying $70 instead of $50. That's to basically reward the last time backers, so you are paying more to get the same thing this time around. But yeah, so that's all overall Sentinels of the Multiverse. A solid game that's gone through so much content. One of the first games I ever bought, been around for a long time, and I don't have enough of an interest to jump in on this, and I still feel tempted to kind of try the Definitive Edition again because I really liked Sentinels of the Multiverse. It was a little too fiddly for me. That's why I eventually left it alone, but it was such a good game for a very long time. I had all the content when they had like 4 expansions, and then they got like 50 expansions, and I stopped having all the content. Moving on, and lastly, Worldbreakers Advents of the Canet. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but Worldbreakers. This is a 2-player head-to-head game, a 2-player combat arena game, which you're going to be basically trying to go through a sequence of playing out cards and playing different events that you're going to be triggering. So there's a whole bunch of things. You're going to be developing locations. That's what it's called. You're going to be playing locations, and then every round you're going to be developing the various locations to get their abilities. The goal of the game is ultimately to get 10 power, I believe, before your opponent. It might be a different number, but I think it's 10 power. Trying to get 10 power before, here we go, reach 10 power to win, forever reshaping history. Like I said, 2-player head-to-head game, lots of card combat, lots of typical, you know, card-based system, which you're going to have powers and abilities and different things, and it's all about trying to figure out the way to build your deck or to build your cards as you try to figure out how to play them and efficiently and go through the actions you need to ultimately win. It's a fairly standard genre. There's a lot of differences in the unique stuff that this is doing, but that's the higher level overview. As far as the pledge levels, we have $30 for the base game over here, $30 for the Worldbreakers Advents of the... I can't say the last name, I don't know what it is. And then we have $80 for the deluxe edition of the game, which is going to give you the base game. It's going to give you 2 playmats. It's going to give you the first edition over here, the box over here, the 10,000 ride deck box. And it's also giving you a drafting card doubler. So more cards, not unique cards, but more content in order to unlock a 4-player draft of the experience as well. As far as will it hold its value, well, it's not. This style of game just generally doesn't do a great job holding its value. It's nothing against this game in particular, just in general, card-based head-to-head combat games with some exceptions. There are exceptions always, but for the most part it's a very crowded field and it's usually very hard to stand out. There's a decent amount of content on the game, including testimonials that do make it sound like a solid experience, but that's still, practically speaking, is hard to stand out. I mean, 325 backers, it's funded, it's great, that's awesome, but it's also not like, you know, 7,000 backers. Well, for 7,000 is a lot. It's also not 1,000 backers, and so that's usually translates over to retail as well, so I'm skeptical that you'll be able to get your $30 back if this is a game that's not for you. And that is everything, which brings us to the pick of the week. Picks of the week. In general, I picked 2 picks of the week, a game that I am personally the most interested in, and then a game that I think is most likely to hold its value, and I need to start going back and figuring out what's what. Here we go. Western Legends Big Box is the campaign that I think is most likely to hold its value. Overall, the campaign has done fairly well in general, in terms of the past content, and especially this $270 pledge, if you're getting that, I think this is the one that is the safest back overall, as far as just, you know, being a game that holds its value. And then as far as personal interest, I'm going to give it to Illiterati this week. Illiterati is my personal interest pick of the week, a really enjoyable game that I had a lot of fun. Oh wait, no, I forgot. 1 second. I need to pause. That's hard. I forgot about Earth Under Siege Flashpoint. Okay, I'm going to say Illiterati and Earth Under Siege Flashpoint. They are both fantastic games, and I don't want to pick one, and I forgot about the Earth Under Siege. Oh my gosh, that's hard. So both of those. Let's just say both of those. Both of those are my personal interest picks of the week as far as games I am the most interested in. And lastly, as far as games coming up, I started talking about, you know, just a few quick notes about a few things coming up next week. We have a whole bunch of stuff. There's like 10 campaigns plus launching on Tuesday, but effectively we have Motor City, a strategic engine building roll and write game. Highly recommend this one. I already have content up on the channel if you want to check out a review review of this, but if you like roll and writes, this is one I can easily recommend. We have Hamlet from David Cherkoff from Mighty Boards. This is a solid game of building out production lines and utilizing each other's production as you build out the Hamlet together. And then lastly, we have Tama Chronicle of Ascend from Awakened Realms Light, a solid programming game over on GameFound. We'll talk more about it. I will have content up at some point, well, shortly. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for hanging out through this very, very long video. And as always, have a good one. I don't have any major after video stuff today. I did have cold air blowing on me because we finally switched the AC on. It's a beautiful day outside today, at least where I am in Ohio. Beautiful, beautiful day. But that meant we turned the AC on, which meant I had cold air blowing on me in the basement, and it's not that beautiful a day. So it's a balance there. But past that, it's been a pretty good day. I'm prepping for next week where I'll be out at Gamma, so I'm trying to film a whole bunch of videos, which means in the past 24 hours, I have filmed 9 videos so far, which is good. That's how I stay ahead of the game. It's one of those fun things. If you pay attention to the shirt I'm wearing, sometimes the shirt will be consistent for like 4 videos in a row, and that's just the nature of me filming a whole bunch of videos in one day and not bothering to change. See, the reason I don't change shirts is because sometimes I film 4 videos in a row, and then I intersperse them with another day where I film 4 videos in a row, and they end up having to balance out anyways. So sometimes, even though I film 9 videos, you're not going to see them consistently enough. And I did change my shirt once in between those videos, just to have something. But point is, it's been a busy day. But we're going to go ahead and move on over to the next thing. And that's basically it. Do I have any good jokes? Here, I have a good joke, okay? A decent joke. It's not a good joke, but it's something. The Earth is made up of 70% water. That water is not carbonated. Therefore, the Earth is flat.